Donald M. Defibaugh was born on August 8, 1931 in Altoona, Pennsylvania, to Milton and Alma Defibaugh. On his obituary, it says that he had four siblings named Jane, Ethel, Donald, and John, but I could only find Jane, Ethel, and Dawn that were connected to him on Find the Grave, and it says that they passed away sometime in the early, like late 90s and around the 2000s. I don't know if John passed away or if he did, if he wasn't connected to David, because yet again, you had to go in. Find a grade doesn't automatically do it for you. Like sometimes you have to go in and connect them just like you would have to with Ancestry. And either John didn't pass away yet, or nobody's done that to connect him with the rest of his family. At some point, the family of seven had lived in Juniata Gap before they moved to Upper Carson Valley in Duncansville. David would go to Hollidaysburg area high school, but as far as I can tell, he probably didn't graduate because he joined the Army when he was 17 and was sent off to training at Fort Knox in Kentucky before he was sent to Fort Belvoir in Virginia. After he was done training in Fort Belvoir, he was sent to Japan where he went to a flamethrower school. After he was done at the flamethrower school in 1950, he was assigned to Company C, Engineer Combat Battalion, 34th Infantry Regiment, 24th Infantry Division, which I don't know if that's a lot of detail or if that was just, it should have been separated into two different things that he did, and it just wasn't, but I couldn't really find. There's a website called Fold 3. I couldn't really find anything on him with that other than confirming that he had been killed in battle. So I'm not quite sure if that whole thing's his assignment or not. But he was sent to Korea in July of 1950, and he, depending on when exactly he was sent, he would have only been there about 2 weeks before him and several other members of his division had been overwhelmed during the Battle of Taejon in South Korea. I didn't write down the number. I forgot to write down the number of how many men were killed or captured or whatnot. But in the end, the retreating our men that were retreating weren't able to recover any of the bodies before they left because they were so overwhelmed. And due to that, they kind of realized that David wasn't with them, but they didn't think he had been taken prisoner. They assumed that he was one of the bodies that had been taken, but they just couldn't get to his body and the others to, try to bring them back so they could identify them. They wouldn't be able to do that until the fall. But obviously by then, if they didn't have anything to identify them, it would be impossible at the time to figure out who was who. So by the time they got there, they couldn't tell one body from the next, so they just gathered them up, sent them to the Punch Bowl in Hawaii, and they were all buried in a mass grave. But because nobody believed that he had been taken in as a prisoner of war, David was declared dead on December 31st, 1953. Now, any other time with the whole, they were taken prisoner, their bodies were never found, it would usually be the end of the story. That's done, you never found their bodies. Well, that's how the story ends in the book, because the book was written before all this other information came out. There's an organization that is called the DPAA, which proposed a plan to disinter 652 of the unknown Korean War soldiers that had been buried at the Punch Bowl in Hawaii in an attempt to use like dental, anthropological, circumstantial evidence. Like if they had something that the family said, oh well, he had this on him, or something like that, or even they even use mitochondrial DNA. Just whatever they could use to try to help identify the unknown soldiers that had been buried there. So they set about trying to get this process done so that they could finally send the soldiers home. Well, on June 10th of 2010, they had started the process on a body called X12. That's how it was identified, because yet again couldn't identify him by the time they got the body back in the fall. The body was sent to the labs, to the DPAA's labs, in what is now the Pearl Harbor Hickam Air Base. Yeah, so the Hickam field that I talked about in the last soldier one, that got combined with Pearl Harbor, so it's now just Pearl Harbor Hickam Base. But the body was sent there in an attempt to see if they could find, some way to identify who this soldier was so they could start the process of getting him sent home. The reason why I'm saying this is because on August 15th, 2022, it was announced that David N. Defibaugh was officially accounted for, and the John K. Bolger Funeral Home went on to make arrangements for him to be buried at Rose Hill Cemetery on November 4th, 2022. So this is only a couple of months ago that he was officially announced as being accounted for, and there's a little mark next to his name, next to the list of soldiers that are MIA and stuff like that. There's a little check mark, there's basically a little marker so that people know that he's been identified, that he's not missing anymore. And like I said, unfortunately, it's a bittersweet ending to his story still, because one, he didn't make it home alive, and two, as far as I could tell, most of his family, like his mother and father, his siblings, either most or all of his siblings, had passed away before they were able to find out what happened to David. Luckily, his siblings went on and had children of their own, so he at least had nieces and nephews that probably heard stories about their Uncle David that were able to come and claim the body and basically welcome him home. So, it doesn't always happen. I mean, there's unknown soldiers that are buried in Arlington. There's unknown soldiers buried in other places around the world. Hopefully, maybe someday. I know before, I forget which unknown soldier in Arlington it was that was identified, but maybe someday we won't have to have an unknown soldier buried anywhere. Maybe technology will get advanced enough and we'll be able to identify them, and families won't have to go years wondering what happened to their great-great-grandfather or uncle or brother or whatever. It won't be a question mark in the family history. It'll just be, oh yeah, he went off the war and never made it back, and took it, like David's case, took us a little bit to get him back, but he's home where he belongs. Right? So, it's kind of another short one. Couldn't find a whole lot of information on him. And on to the next soldier. Right? Bye.